What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, back with your official NFC record predictions for the 2022 NFL season. All 16 NFC teams. I will predict how they will perform this season. I will go through their depth charts, their offense, their defense, discuss their strengths, their weaknesses, what I love about their roster, what I like or dislike about their coaching staff, their schemes, and a lot more. This is a comprehensive breakdown of your favorite NFL team. This is for the NFC. If you forgot, if you missed out, check out the AFC record predictions, which are now up on the channel. We did that live yesterday. We are doing the NFC here live today. So join me in the comments as we preview and predict every NFC team for 2022. Let me know once we hit your team, once we hit every team. If you're in that live comment section, let me know your record prediction for that team. How do you think they'll do this year? Do you think they're going to have an amazing year, a bad year? Do you think they're going to finish first in the division, last in the division? Do you think they're going to go to the playoffs, the Super Bowl? How far will they advance? Any sort of details is much appreciated, just to make this that much better, because you guys make the content that much better. So, if you haven't already, Gronk spike the like button. If you're new to the channel and you like NFL content, you'll love the bottom line view. Consider subscribing. And that's pretty much it, guys. Let's get to it. Let's start with, we're going to go in a different order today. Yesterday, I went north, south, east, west. I think we're going to start with the east. Then we're going to go to the south. Then we're going to go to the north. Then we're going to go to the west. All over the map. But first, let's say hello to the good people in the chat, because we have plenty of good people in the chat. So, we've got Vikings fan who says, "Let's go Vikings." Caesar is a big fan of sangria. Football 12 says hi. What's going on? Vincent Vaughn is in the chat. Packers 12-5. We got Jack, I believe. 321. He's got Vikings 11-6. Harleen Quinzel is also in the chat, saying having sangria, chatting about football is a great combo. I would not disagree with that. What's going on, Macho Boys? Says, "Hey, Mitch." Love the content. Thank you, man. Larry says Carolina wins the division. Big Al, the moderator himself, says fly, Eagles fly. Bucks, too dope, says let's go Bucks. So thank you guys so much for joining. Cameron Patrick Ward is also here. Mock drafting and hearing your analysis can't get much better. Thank you, man. So thank you all for joining the chat, and continue to let me know how you feel about my wacky predictions, because after all, it's just my opinion. So the NFC this year, it's the conference that everybody is saying, it doesn't stack up to the AFC. There's no chance that an NFC team can make their way to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl over the almighty, undisputed, top-notch, whatever other descriptive word you want to use for the AFC. I mean, everybody is just loving the AFC and disrespecting the NFC. But I feel like there are some good teams in the NFC, and there are some sleeper teams in the NFC to keep your eyes on. So, let's begin with the most controversial team in America. They are so controversial that they call themselves America's team. That team is the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys, who I'll be watching in week 1 in Dallas, taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm excited for that one. The Cowboys have plenty of questions entering the season, with many losses coming this offseason. A team that won their division last year handily, dominated the NFC East with Dak Prescott back in the lineup. The Cowboys were a very good team last year, and people didn't really expect them to be a great team last year. I thought that they would probably make it into the wild card, make it into the playoffs, or win the division, get in there somehow. But I didn't see them dominating in the fashion they did and winning as many games as they did last year. Despite the disappointment in the first round losing to the 49ers, the Cowboys were a quality football team last year. But this is a new season. This is a new Cowboys roster. They have lost quite a few impact players on this football team. They've lost their right tackle Collins, their left guard Connor Williams, their number 1 or number 2 receiver, depending how you look at it, Amari Cooper. Now, Michael Gallup, positive news. He should be back earlier than we thought, which will help CeeDee Lamb at wide receiver. They also lost one of their core depth pieces at wide receiver in Cedric Wilson. They still have Zeke. For those of you that want to, hate on the Cowboys because they continue to pay Zeke. Defensively, Randy Gregory is gone. Big loss for them. They lost Tyron Smith for probably most of the year with a torn hamstring, which wasn't a loss in free agency, but a loss in training camp. They have lost a ton of pieces from last year's successful team. Will they have enough to win this division and get back to the playoffs? That is the question. Let's take a look at their offense. So the Dallas Cowboys, offensively, still pretty good. I wouldn't say they're superb. I wouldn't say they're loaded. I wouldn't say they're stacked like they were a year ago. Last year, they were arguably at one point the best offense in the NFL. They did finish, I believe, as the yards leader, as the number 1 yards offense in the NFL. I do believe. And this year, well, I didn't think last year, by the way, they were the number 1 offense. They did finish there. Looking at this offense, it's led by Kellen Moore's play calling. Kellen Moore has been heavily criticized, but I feel like he's been a pretty darn good coordinator for Dak Prescott. But he will be tested this year without Amari Cooper and a lack of weapons, really, for the first time in a couple years. Really? So, you look at the wide receiver position, big question marks. When Michael Gallup isn't out there, don't expect to see him in week 1. Who's going to be out there for him? The question, we don't know. Jalen Tolbert, the rookie, I'm not sure if he'll be playing in the slot or not, but he's the 3rd receiver, probably down the stretch when Michael Gallup comes back. Tolbert's a guy that a lot of people did like in the draft. I haven't heard glowing reviews from him in training camp. I haven't heard bad things either, but nothing, crazy there. I do expect CeeDee Lamb to have a huge season this year. I think he's going to break your fantasy league, and if you're playing in PPR leagues, I would highly suggest getting CeeDee Lamb because he'll probably catch over 100 balls. I do expect Dak Prescott to feed the man. Looking at the offense, it's huge question at left tackle. I know that they did attempt to sign Jason Peters, and I do believe that was done, so I wasn't able to update that yet. But if Jason Peters is on the squad, then Jason Peters will be the left tackle. If he's not, then he's not. Tyler Smith, the rookie guard, plays with a physicality, sets the tone. He's tough. He's gritty. He'll help in the run game. I think he's an upgrade over Connor Williams in that regard. Connor Williams, though, had his best season of his career last year. So you do wonder about the left side of this offensive line. I think a lot of defenses, especially early in the year, are going to attack them and attack them hard with different stunts and blitzes. Don't be surprised if Todd Bowles goes bananas on that left side, putting, Vita Vea over there and Shaq Barrett over there and doing his crazy blitzes that he does. The center, I feel like Tyler Badass is what I call him. He's been getting better and better and better with every season. I do feel like last year was a good season for him. Better than I expected it to be. Zach Martin is elite as anybody in the NFL at the guard position. Is probably the best, most consistent guard in football. Terrence Steele is a solid tackle. I think this is something that a lot of people I feel have overrated about the Cowboys is replacing Collins because he's had, a lot of time. He's been out a lot. So I feel like they've been prepared for this. Steele has stepped up in his place to perform at a fairly average rate. Dalton Schultz is a very good tight end, but I do not believe he's a game changer. Of course, you've got Zeke and Pollard in the backfield. I do believe they need to more heavily lean on Tony Pollard this year. But looking at that offense, I think there's a couple things to say about that. I do feel like Dak Prescott is going to be tested this year. There's been a couple of years, and Kellen Moore, like I said, there's been a couple seasons where I feel like when Dak has been at his best statistically, of course he's had the best weapons around him. He's had phenomenal weapons around him for most of his career. We did see Dak hit a slight slump early in his career, his second, third year, where he wasn't statistically, putting up huge numbers. He didn't have phenomenal receivers. They ended up trading for Amari Cooper. That kind of started the surge for Dak Prescott. So he loses that Amari Cooper piece. Now he still has Dalton Schultz. He still has, Zeke, Pollard. He still has CeeDee Lamb, but he doesn't have the great number 2, great number 3, great tight end, great running backs like he did last year. So expect a slight dip from Dak offensively and production-wise. The offensive line is a lot more questionable than it's been in years. So those are all issues with the offense. I think expect this team to still run at a fast pace. Expect this team to still be pass first, but I would expect more passing to the running backs this year with the question marks at wide receiver. I would expect Dalton Schultz to see an uptick in catches in this offense as well. And like I said, I just think it comes down to, can Dak Prescott and Kellen Moore elevate the talent that's there currently? It's not bad talent. It's probably average supporting cast offensively, but it's not elite like it was before. And I've never seen Dak. I like Dak, but I've never seen Dak in a big game elevate his team to the point where he carries his team in a massive game and puts them on his back to win it. So that's a huge question for the Cowboys this year. Can Dak take that step from, you're very good at quarterback, you're good, we know what you can do, but can you go to the elite status this year? And that's my biggest question about Dak and really this offense. I think CeeDee Lamb is going to really have a great year. Defensively, the Dallas Cowboys are arguably, stronger on defense entering the year. They were a pretty strong defense last season. They caused the most turnovers in the NFL last year. I believe they finished top 10 in yardage last year, or one of those yardage or scoring categories. Regardless, this is a defense that I don't mind. I like how aggressive they are in terms of they utilize their strengths very well, which they utilize their speed. They utilize man coverage a lot more than Dan Quinn defenses previously had in Atlanta. And I do think that their cornerback group is a little bit underrated. Trayvon Diggs is a bit of a meme because he's rather amazing or really bad. But if he could just be a little bit more steady as that cornerback number 1, then that will bring, a lot of stable play to this defense. Jordan Lewis is a pretty decent nickel corner. He's been there for the last 3 or 4 years. Brown kind of gets picked on, targeted a lot, but actually when you look at his deeper numbers and the efficiency that quarterbacks have targeting him, it's not that great. Dorrance Armstrong, I think, will step up into the starting role for Randy Gregory. I think he's a solid player. He's pretty big. He's got long arms. I think he's going to be solid against the run. They added, different pass rushers to the defense like Dante Fowler. They're expecting big things out of him in rotation situations. The other thing I will say about the Cowboys is they are always good at finding, depth pass rushers, edge players. They always do a very good job of identifying those guys. You could also see Micah Parsons, move to the edge in big situations or in clear pass situations. And then you could see somebody like Leighton Vander Esch take his spot at linebacker, potentially another safety added to the field, or even Anthony Barr, who they added from Minnesota, who goes to Dallas to play linebacker in that defense as well. So you could see a lot of versatility with what they can do with Micah Parsons. DeMarcus Lawrence is also a very versatile piece where he could play outside or inside on this defense. And I do think in passing situations, he's going to move to the inside a lot more to get their best possible pass rush up there. Gallimore is a bit of a question. I don't really, their interior defensive line is certainly weak, They're younger players that we don't really know what they're going to be, but we will see. Okay, so I can't really give you much analysis on that, but yeah, just not much to really go off of. They're kind of expecting these guys that they've drafted in recent years to take a step forward and contribute. So that's the Dallas Cowboys overall as a football team on offense and defense. I have questions on both sides of the ball. I feel fairly confident that they'll be able to replace the guys that they had on defense, like Randy Gregory. I don't think it's going to be an overly huge loss, but I am worried certainly about Tyron Smith. I think that was a huge blow for them this training camp. I do worry about the lack of, depth at receiver that they used to have that I think will kind of just trickle down and affect the whole team because they were such an efficient passing attack that's going to put more pressure on other areas of their team. The offensive line compounding with the lack of depth at receiver is also an issue for me. So looking at the Dallas Cowboys, I view them as a borderline playoff team. I'm pretty strong on the team that I feel like is going to win this division. We'll get to them in a second here. But the Cowboys, I could see making the playoffs as a wild card because of Dak Prescott, because they have a solid quarterback. They probably have one of the 5 or 6 best quarterbacks in the conference. So that being said, they could make the playoffs based on that really alone. And they do have enough roster talent sprinkled throughout, when it comes to CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, Zach Martin, Micah Parsons, Trayvon Diggs. They've got plenty of talent to be able to make that run. But personally this year, I do view the Cowboys as a team that's taking a step back, and I do have them going 8-9 this year. The reason I went to 8-9, I've had them at 9-8 the whole offseason. The reason I docked them 1 win was because of the Tyron Smith injury. So yeah, that basically just absolutely kills my projection for them to get a winning record, because I think that's just a massive loss. I think the schedule isn't super tough, so if they were to surprise, and go 11-6, I wouldn't be overly shocked by that. But I am strong on the under this year for Dallas. They seem to be a team that has inconsistencies every year in terms of they win 1 year, they go to the playoffs 1 year, and then they miss the playoffs the next. So the Dallas Cowboys, I have it 8-9, ceiling of 11-6, make the playoffs, win the division, floor of 7-10. But I do think that the Cowboys are heavily connected to how the Philadelphia Eagles do. So we might as well just get to the Philadelphia Eagles right now and talk about why I have the Philadelphia Eagles winning this division over the Dallas Cowboys. So the Philadelphia Eagles, I have with a shocking record of 12-5. I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFL this year. I think they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFC this year. I think that they are going to dominate the line of scrimmage. I do think Jalen Hurts is going to take a huge step forward with the weaponry around him, including A.J. Brown. I have them going 12-5, a ceiling of 13-4, like almost a very reminiscent season of 2017 with Carson Wentz, where you see this huge surge from their young quarterback. Floor 8-9, because I could see a world where Jalen Hurts just isn't very good. The coaching is maybe not as good as we thought, and their older players are just old. Like Darius Slay takes a step back, Fletcher Cox takes a step back. These guys just get old. Jason Kelsey, and that can happen very quickly. So that is a potential avenue that the Eagles could go down. But the over-under, I am strong on the over for the Eagles. I feel very confident in this roster, in this team, in this coaching staff. I think they're going to be a very good team. Now let's look at why I think they're going to be a very good team. Their depth charts, okay? The Philadelphia Eagles offensively, the wide receiver position, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. I mean, that's a heck of a 1-2. You've got Devontae, who's entering typically a year where wide receivers break out. Year 2 receivers is a big breakout age, right? And you add A.J. Brown to be the alpha number 1, where he made Ryan Tannehill look a lot better potentially than Ryan Tannehill is. There's at least an argument for that, right? But A.J. Brown can move around. You could play him in the slot. You could play him outside. He can run vertical. He can beat you underneath. He can beat you in the intermediate range. And I think A.J. Brown, the biggest thing he's going to do for this offense is create yards after catch when he gets the football And he's going to be that dude that hurts targets in the intermediate range of the field when he needs a play. That's what he's going to unlock. I think Devontae Smith will primarily be the downfield target. Quez Watkins is another guy that can fly. He can make plays in the screen game down the field as well. Hurts' rushing ability opens up everything for this offense down the field. You could very much see an Eagles offense that is reminiscent of the 2019 Ravens, where it's a lot easier for them to hit their targets down the field because everyone is so focused on stopping the run game from Jalen Hurts, from this powerful offensive line. And they've got a fantastic offensive line with 2 elite tackles, an elite center, and very good guards. So this is just an offense that I think is going to be really, really fun to watch. And I do think they'll be probably in the top 10-ish, I want to say. Top 10-ish kind of area. So the Philadelphia Eagles, strong running game. Can Jalen Hurts take the next step? I believe that he will take the next step. Do I think he's going to be MVP? No, I don't think that. But I think he's going to be pretty darn good. And he's going to be very nice for your fantasy team if you drafted him. I also believe that A.J. Brown, because he's been in an offense that was primarily run heavy, he's not going to have any issue fitting into Philadelphia. And I do believe that A.J. Brown is going to put defenses in a bind. Defenses are going to have to choose. You know, do you want to defend Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on the outside, or do you want to stack the box and defend the run? Either way, the Eagles will be able to hurt you, and I think a lot of teams are going to force Jalen Hurts to beat them with his right arm, and I think he'll be able to, as long as, you know, he's not facing an elite passing defense, or defense where they're able to stop the run well enough, you know, without having to load the box, or have great corners who can cover those receivers. So I think, like, for many defenses, they're going to have issues with the Eagles. But looking at the defense, which is really where I feel like that is where this team really could truly unlock their pure potential. This defense could be really, really good. I do have questions about the scheme. I think the biggest area of concern for Philadelphia, coaching-wise, is the defensive scheme and the evolution from Gannon on that side of the ball. I felt like last year they played far too soft in terms of their coverages, the too deep defenses a lot of the time, allowing quarterbacks to dink and dunk their way down the field, not stressing quarterbacks or offenses out by showing different looks, by causing confusion. If the Eagles just schematically can get better in terms of diversifying their portfolio a little bit, I do feel like the Eagles defense could take a step forward even without the additions that they've made, including Hassan Reddick, including getting Brandon Graham back, including getting Jordan Davis, a huge monster of a nose tackle in the first round, including getting James Bradbury, including getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and Kazir White. These are all additions to this team. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, potentially 6 starters that they added to their defense this year. That could change things. I do believe the team will rank at the top of the league in terms of the ability to get 4-man pressure on a quarterback. I also think they're going to be very good at stopping the run without having to put many resources into it. So the Philadelphia Eagles, as you guys can see, are absolutely positively stacked. And that is why I have them going 12-5. Let's move to the next team. All right. Next team, we've got the New York G-Men. The New York Giants are a team that I started this offseason. They added Brian Daboll. They added Don Martindale. They got a huge upgrade at coaching staff, right? They got a huge upgrade offensive scheme, huge upgrade at defensive scheme, and a team that I just felt like was going to be able to maximize some of their greatest pieces, like their quarterback Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Kadarius Toney. They added to their offensive line, which I thought was fantastic, you know, bringing in Evan Neal, bringing in Mark Lewinsky, some great additions to this team. But, you know, there's areas of massive question marks, massive weaknesses, and I still think this team's a year or two away from, you know, being a huge competitor. You know, could they potentially be a sleeper this year with a very weak schedule, you know, with a improved coaching staff that maybe they're so much better than Joe Judge that that helps them drastically. There's potential for that, but I just don't see it this year. I think they're too far away in terms of talent. So let's go over that talent. Offensively, you've got John Feliciano, who they added to the center position. He's been dealing with some injuries throughout training camp. Mark Lewinsky is a good player. He had probably his best season ever last year with the Colts. They've got a rookie starting at left guard. I believe they drafted him in the 3rd round. Evan Neal is a stud, my favorite player in the draft. I think he's going to be a stud right away. I don't love the tight end, Bellinger, who's also a rookie. I believe he's a rookie or maybe a second-year player. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, could have a role in terms of his yards after catch possibilities and his, they could move him around and do different things with him. He's a smaller guy, but he can make things happen. Kadarius Toney has huge upside to play outside, inside. He's got great feet, great route running ability. As long as he's healthy and on the field, he's going to be one of the most fun receivers in the NFL to watch. Kenny Golladay is probably dust at this point based on what I've seen in training camp and preseason. I mean, I watched him play my Patriots in preseason. He looked awful. So I don't know if he's going to be anything for them. And that's looking like a really bad signing that they made a couple of years ago. Daniel Jones, I do think's better than people give him credit for, especially in terms of his mobility and his downfield passing ability. I do think he's going to outperform expectations for the Giants this year. Whether or not that's enough for him to stick around in the future, that's another question entirely. Saquon Barkley looks phenomenal in training camp. Looked good in preseason, looks like Saquon Barkley. I'm expecting a huge year for him. And if, nothing else happens for this team, if they just get elite Saquon back, that would be, just fun for the rest of us to watch. Defensively, you look at this defense, they're pretty strong in terms of their interior defensive line. Lawrence and Williams are a great combination in the middle. The linebackers are extremely questionable. I think this is the biggest area of weakness for them. They released Blake Martinez, which is interesting. You would have thought that he would have been their best linebacker entering the year. Obviously, he's coming off injuries, a little bit older, cap space, all that stuff has to do with it. Maybe they like some of their younger linebackers. I could be wrong about that. Thibodeau, coming from Oregon, high draft pick. I wasn't the biggest fan of him. Coming out of the draft, he did get hurt in the preseason. I'm not sure how much that will affect him. I expect him to be back somewhat early in the season, but that is a little bit of a blow. They were expecting big things out of him. I do expect Dory Jackson to still play at a high level, but I'm concerned about the other cornerbacks, especially Holmes and Robinson. I just don't know if they're starting corners in this league. The safeties are good, though. McKinney's very good and Love's a player that I've liked. So they lost Logan Ryan, who was kind of that guy in the back end who set everything up for them. I think the Giants, Don Martindale is going to elevate them defensively in terms of they're going to be aggressive. So they're going to be a little bit hit and miss. They're going to allow some big plays, but I do feel like they're also going to change games and causing some turnovers. And I do feel like Don Martindale gets the most out of his defenses typically. I am concerned about the corner play, though. Typically his defenses have strong corners and this defense doesn't, but it does have strong interior defensive line that should be very good against the run. And in passing situations, he's great at scheming pressure. Offensively, I do think they're going to be better than people think. I think their run game is going to be greatly improved. I think they'll protect Daniel Jones. And I do think if Toney and Wan'Dale are healthy, they'll be very effective, and they'll be the 1-2. Kenny Golladay will not be in that conversation. So that's how I view the Giants. My record for them is a 6-11 record. I had them earlier this offseason, I believe, at 7-10. Kind of just docked them a little bit. I feel like they're just not quite there yet, but I do believe that they'll take a step forward in terms of just vision, entertainment this year. I feel like they're just going to be a more entertaining team to watch. They're not going to be such a disaster. I do believe that Saquon is going to be, healthy and good to go this year. I'm excited for that. Ceiling prediction, 9-8. If Daniel Jones just drastically improves through this new offensive staff and Kadarius Toney breaks out and the offensive line's a lot better, 9-8 is not without, possibility. That could happen based on the schedule, which is one of the weakest in the NFL. Their floor is about 4 wins because even if Daniel Jones sucks, they still got like a quality backup in Tyrod Taylor. If I were to bet it, I'd take the under on the Giants. Under 7.5 feels pretty safe, in my opinion. I don't think, there's a scenario, like I said, where they go over that, but not a likely one. I just don't see the talent being there for them personally. So that's the Giants. Now, the last team in the NFC East is the Washington Commanders. The Washington Commanders, who I was honestly just getting used to calling them the Washington football team, have changed their name so many times that I don't even know if... I don't know, man. I just don't like it, okay? Stop changing your name, please. But the Washington Commanders, a team that made the playoffs 2 years ago by some sort of miracle. Everyone remembers that Heineken went in there and almost beat the Bucs. But they've got a new quarterback. His name is Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was a former in 2017, close to being MVP. He was a runner-up there that year to Tom Brady. And can he get back to being a good quarterback in this league? In my opinion, probably not. What I've heard in the training camp, off-season, reading stuff, seeing stuff, it doesn't look great. I'm hearing some pretty bad things out of Washington camp. Luckily for them, I feel like they've got a lot of support. I think the coaching staff's solid. I think Ron Rivera is a very solid coach. I feel like offensively, they're an underrated staff. I think the offensive line has been underrated the last couple of years. The question is, does Carson Wentz come in there and then deteriorate what they've been able to do because Carson Wentz holds on the ball too much? That is a question we'll talk about here. But they got Terry McLaurin. They drafted a first-round receiver, Jahan Dotson. The defense has the potential to be very good with a strong defensive line, but there are missing pieces to this team. So it's one of these teams that I could see just being flat-out average, or a team that maybe in their best scenario competes for a wild card spot. So looking at their offense, I think Washington... Like I said, I like the weapons. I feel like with McLaurin, Dotson, Samuel, Brown, they've got a bunch of guys that can fly. They've got speed. Gibson probably being the starter. Hopefully Brian Robinson, he recovers 100%. Carson Wentz, though, I just don't know. If I feel like there's a very realistic scenario where Carson Wentz just falls on his face this year. Like I could really see that happening 100%. The offensive line, though, is good across the board. Like, no real weaknesses. They brought in Andrew Norwell to replace Brandon Scherf. Trey Turner, a guy that also played in the past under Ron Rivera. Norwell was the same. I do think the center is one of the more underrated centers in the league. Cosme, Leno, and they've got, 2 or 3 pretty good tackles. Like, they've even got quality depth behind their offensive line. Logan Thomas comes back healthy. We'll see what he can do coming off that major injury. Defensively, Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller is a good player. I think consistently plays good football for them, whether it's in the nickel spot or outside. William Jackson has been a little bit of a roller coaster, but we've seen him have peaks of being one of the best corners in football. Davis, he didn't really look great in his rookie season. Holcomb is a solid linebacker. Curl is a little bit underrated. McCain had a good year last year. So the safeties, I think, are actually, pretty solid. The defensive line is really where they have to dominate. You look at Sweat, Young, Payne, and Allen. Allen, the best of the 4, in my opinion, by a good margin based on his success last season. Payne is a big run defender. Young comes back from injury. We'll see what he looks like. I think he might start the season slow. Montez Sweat's also a freak that nobody talks about, but yeah, they're going to have to dominate at the line of scrimmage. They're going to have to get after the quarterback with that 4-man rush, and Jack Del Rio has disappointed me with his management of this defense recently. If he can add some flavor, some flair to this defense to help that pass rush get home, I think that they can be a better defense than we think. They've had flashes of being very dominant, but it hasn't all come together since forming that fearsome foursome, I should say. So the Commanders, my record for them is 7-10. I've got them at 7-10. My ceiling is 10-7. My floor is 5-12. And my over-under is 7.5. I'm going under there because I do think they're going to hit 7, but I'm not going to bet on that because I feel like the Commanders are going to be somewhere between 6 and 9 wins this year pretty confidently. I don't see a huge range for them in terms of ceiling and floor. They're a team that is very much established in terms of their ceiling and their floor. It's going to be somewhere between 6 to 9 wins for them, and, you know, being the third to second best team in their division. That's kind of how I look at them. So Washington is done, and that means we're going to move to the NFC South. The NFC South is going to be our next division here, and our second division. If you guys are enjoying this video, don't forget to Gronk spike the like button. Also, comment your record predictions in the comment section below or in the live chat if you're in there right now. All right, let's begin the NFC South with the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers are a team that I'm excited for this year. I'm always backing the Panthers. I've always been a bit of a Panthers fan. The Panthers are a football team that I'm rooting for to do well this year. Baker Mayfield is a story, a person, a quarterback that I'm rooting for to have a successful season, given how they treated him in Cleveland, given who they brought in to replace him. That was a bunch of garbage, in my opinion. And I think that whole scenario where he got injured, played through the injury, it absolutely devastated him and his potential in Cleveland. And, you know, this is a guy that, after all, I mean, no matter what you think of Baker, if you think he's great, if you think he sucks, whatever, fact of the matter is, this is a quarterback who brought the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs, and no other quarterback in recent memory can say that. So Baker Mayfield achieved that, and he's had a pretty solid early career. Not spectacular, not special, but a solid NFL career so far. Can he be the difference between the Panthers last year being a team that was pretty strong around the quarterback but had terrible quarterback play? Can the Panthers make a run to the wild card or something like that? I wouldn't expect them to win this division because there's Tampa Bay and New Orleans is probably more talented than them, but Carolina has enough talent to potentially squeak in the wild card. So let's talk about it. Offensively, their offensive line is one of the more improved offensive lines in football. I think that they drastically improved. Aquanu should be a big upgrade at left tackle. Even as a rookie, I expect him to at least have an impact in the run game, which will be very nice for McCaffrey. It does look like Michael Jordan, no, not that Michael Jordan, is going to be starting at left guard. Bradley Bozeman is a good center who they got from the Ravens. He's going to bring some power to this offensive line. Austin Corbett comes from the Rams, good football player, had success there with the Rams, winning a Super Bowl. Taylor Moton, or Moton, I don't know how to say his name. I don't know, okay, is a great right tackle. I think he's like probably the most underrated right tackle in the NFL. Tommy Tremble's expected to start at tight end. They haven't gotten much out of that position since Greg Olsen left, which is kind of sad. I kind of miss Greg Olsen. DJ Moore is a phenomenal receiver. I think with the best quarterback of his career, which is Baker Mayfield, you could see DJ Moore going from a top 15 receiver to possibly a top 10 receiver in the NFL this year. Robbie Anderson, he's hit and miss. He's just inconsistent, as is his personality. Terrace Marshall, I'm not sure if this guy's ever going to get it in the NFL. They also added Rashard Higgins, who is the best friend of Baker Mayfield as well, at wide receiver. McCaffrey, I expect to be healthy this year, and when he's healthy, you know he dominates. Defensively, this is a team that is pretty strong. I don't think they're as strong as they were last year because they did lose Hassan Reddick, who was a massive piece to the success of this defensive line. You know, Reddick and Burns were just really a duo that dominated a lot of teams up front. They do expect Derek Brown to take a step forward this year. Matt Ioannidis was an addition that I absolutely love. I do think they upgraded there from Matt Ioannidis going to him over Morgan Fox. Yetur Gross-Matos, we'll see. He hasn't really played much. He was a second-round pick a couple of years ago, but a lot of questions about him. J.C. Horn, I think, looked really good early in his career. Very early in his career, first few games. I do think he'll be good in the NFL, and it is expected for him to play in the nickel spot. CJ Henderson seems to be in a good place. I've heard good things about him in training camp. I think he's got a lot of talent, especially in man coverage. So we'll see if he can make an impact. I think this corner group overall is underrated. They're very athletic. Henderson and Jackson can run, and they've got solid size. I think Horn can hold it down in the nickel, and then Shaq Thompson's a phenomenal cover linebacker. I think Xavier Woods helps them at safety. Jeremy Chin is getting better every year and is kind of one of the most unique defensive weapons in the NFL. So the Panthers will have a good defense, an improved offense. I think that is an improved team overall. This is a team that I would not be surprised if they made the playoffs. Now, my projection for them is held back because I'm not in love with the coaching. And that's really what holds the Panthers back from me putting them in the wild card position. I'm not a Matt Rule fan. I don't love Matt Rule as the head coach. I don't love Ben McAdoo, although I don't hate him as much as other people do. Their ceiling is 10-7 if Baker plays really well and McCaffrey's fully healthy. And their defense is as good as last year. I think they could actually be pretty darn good if those things fall in line for them. But the record is most likely 7-10, 8-9, 6-11, somewhere in that range. If they squeaked out a 9-8 finish, I think that could happen as well and make the playoffs. Their floor is if Baker plays really bad like he did at the end of last year for Cleveland, but that would probably require an injury. And if their offensive line doesn't improve, that's another possibility. Over, under, I'm going over though. It is 6.5, but I do feel like they're over for this team. Really talking about it now is a lot more common in terms of my thought of where they're going to be at the end of the year than the under. So I do feel the upside is greater than the downside for the Panthers this season, as I completely just messed that graphic up. All right, let's get to the next team. The Atlanta Falcons are next. The Atlanta Falcons, I'm sorry, Falcons fans. I'm sorry, Ultra. I'm sorry, Wave God. I'm sorry to you guys who have to watch this football team this year. They're not going to be very good. But hey, the Atlanta Falcons could be a pretty fun team to watch. Why? Well, they got Marcus Mariota, and they've got the twin towers of Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I'm expecting a phenomenal season from Kyle Pitts this year. I am going to say this, quote it, cut it, clip it, whatever you want to do. Kyle Pitts will catch 100 passes this year as a member of the Atlanta Falcons, and he will put up big numbers as basically a wide receiver who's playing tight end. Offensive depth chart. Let's take a look. All right, the offensive depth chart is not the greatest. They brought in Bryan Edwards to help, that depth at receiver. I haven't heard much about him. It's been pretty quiet in terms of Bryan Edwards, who is a guy that John Gruden fell in love with, not too long ago. Zacchaeus, we'll see what he can do in the slot. I think he's a fine receiver. He's probably not a starting receiver in the NFL, but I think he's a solid depth player. Drake London, I think, is going to be really good for them. Maybe not right away, but I think he can make plays right away in terms of contested situations. He's just a target monster. He's a true alpha target. We saw what he could do at USC, just getting spammed there, in every way, shape, and form when it came to down the field, intermediate, screen game. He could really do it all. He's kind of a interesting receiver because he's somebody that can not only win 50-50, but he's really good really good at breaking tackles, really good after the catch, which is something that usually you don't see that combination. Offensive line, Jake Matthews still playing at a good level. Hennessy, I thought really good run blocker, not a great pass blocker, struggled in that regard. Chris Lindstrom is one of the more underrated guards in football. Very good player, has been a top 10 guard the last 2 years, according to PFF. Elijah Wilkinson looking to replace Mayfield at left guard. We'll see what he can do there. And Caleb McGarry has been a downright disaster since being drafted. Kyle Pitts, I will say about McGarry, just to be a little bit nice to him, he's gotten better. Kyle Pitts, you know what he can do. Marcus Mariota, I do feel looked good in preseason. Actually, he was really good in preseason. So we'll see how he'll look. I'm hoping he does well. Cordell Patterson is probably the best football player on earth at running back there. So you got Cordell Patterson. All right, defensively, Deion Jones. Can he bounce back this year for the Atlanta Falcons defense? Highly disappointing for them last year. Did not play his best football. Maybe it has to do with the Dean Pease scheme change. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Rashaan Evans, they brought in from Tennessee. He has familiarity with this defense. He's going to complement Deion Jones quite well, in my opinion, as the downhill thumper. And Jones can be more of the space cover guy. You've got Grady Jarrett, who's really good, but the rest of the D-line is highly questionable. They did draft multiple defensive end edge types. Moore is another one that they drafted pretty high, I think third or second round. Oliver, back healthy at the nickel spot, should help. And their corner position's pretty good, actually. Casey Hayward and A.J. Terrell, one of the better combos in football. I'm not really sure why they brought in Casey Hayward, but hey, it helps them be a better team this year. And I do think they have corners that can really cover and match up. Grant and Hawkins are two younger players that I do feel have upside. I do like Richie Grant quite a bit. So the defense, not a lot of well-known names there, but a defense that will be well-schooled, well-taught under Dean Pease, and will probably exceed expectations. I'm sorry, Atlanta Falcons fans, you guys are not going to like what you hear here, or maybe you will, because I have you projected for a very bad record of 3-14, which would be probably one of the worst records in the NFL overall, and that would probably mean that you guys are picking in the top 3, maybe even the top 1. 3-14, 6-11, ceiling prediction if Marcus Mariota plays really good football. Maybe that's possible. The offensive line, who knows? Floor is 2-15 because they stink, and then the over-under, I'm probably going to lean towards the under there. Sorry, Falcons fans. But all I will say about teams like the Atlanta Falcons who are rebuilding, you want to see some of your younger players continue to progress. You want to see those players really form into foundational pieces for your roster. Okay. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's do it. All right. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, your Super Bowl champions from 2 seasons ago. The first year that Tom Brady arrived in Tampa Bay, he not only beat the great Tyler Heineken, but he also defeated Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes as a member of the Bucs to win the Super Bowl. The goal for the Bucs is this year, winning the Super Bowl. This is probably going to be the final year of Tom Brady's career. I think. Maybe. Who actually knows? But I think it will be. He's had some stressful situation in this training camp. Left the training camp. Everyone's concerned that he's not focused on football. He won't be the same guy. He was voted number 1 on the top 100. Where's the motivation? What's the motivation? It's Tom Brady, guys. Don't doubt Tom Brady. And he looked pretty good in preseason. He only played 1 drive. But man, the guy was zipping the ball left and right, looking real good. And Tom will be one of the best quarterbacks this year in football. Last year was the best quarterback in football, leading the NFL in yards and touchdowns, in my opinion, okay? But you expect the Bucs to be very good. They have a very good team. I think a thing that's not often discussed is the change at coach. So Todd Bowles is now the new head coach. Bruce Arians is gonzo. And there was also drama surrounding that. People were thinking that that was due to Tom Brady, and Tom Brady retired, then he came back, and Arians retired at the similar time. Was that to do with Brady? Who actually really knows? But Bruce Arians is speaking glowingly in the media about this team and about Tom Brady, so they seem to be in a good space and seem to be in a good relationship, so I don't really know if that had much to do with it. But so basically what you have with this team is a head coach in Todd Bowles, who's really the head coach of the defense, and you've got a head coach of the offense in Byron Leftwich and Tom Brady. Byron Leftwich, I think, shout out to him. I was heavily critical of him early in his first season as the coordinator for Brady, And I feel like he's become one of the best offensive play callers in the league. He gives a lot to Brady, you know, in terms of the command at the line, in terms of what Brady wants to do, you know, obviously. But I feel like Leftwich has a very unique and deep passing attack that, you know, maybe not many quarterbacks could really master the way that Brady does. But I feel like they have a very diverse passing attack, you know, from under center to play action to screens to shotgun to empty to spread to all this different stuff. And I think this is why this team continues to be, you know, passing the way they do at the rate that they do, because their diversity within their passing game is pretty special. And I think that this year you're going to see more spread formations for the Bucs. You're going to see more 4-receiver, 5-receiver formations for this football team, out of empty formations, out of spread formations. It's going to be very reminiscent for Patriots fans that watched the 2007 Patriots. I think that this offense is very much going to look like that. I think the running game is not going to be a huge priority for this team. It's going to be more of like a spell thing, the way that it was last year. But that allowed the Bucs to become the most efficient and effective offense in the NFL last year because they were so pass heavy and Brady was so effective when passing the football. I think they're going to continue to be that way, maybe even more so with some of the offensive line issues that they have. I think the more that they can, you know, deliver the football quick out of the hands of Brady, that's going to help with the offensive line. And maybe that will actually help them become a more efficient offense, you know, maybe lessening the load of downfield attack to more of a short and quick passing attack. But looking at the offense, this is one of the best offenses in the league. I rank it number 1, despite the loss of Ryan Jensen. Now, this is something that the media will continue to spread, is that the offensive line in the interior is awful and that it's going to be the demise of this team. I don't agree with that. I just don't see it. I mean, Tom Brady's dealt with offensive line injuries before. The teams that he's played on have been fine. And Tom Brady is better than anybody at managing, you know, offensive line deficiencies in front of him because of the way that he gets rid of the ball and because of his pre-snap acumen to be able to put his offensive line into the right protections to be able to allow him the time to maneuver the pocket and make the throws. Godkey was always going to be the left guard. He is a rookie. We're going to see how he performs. I expect him to maybe struggle early in the year, but get better as the year goes on. Robert Hainsey is actually a pretty good football player. I do feel like Ryan Jensen is a very good center. He's one of the best in the game. He is more so a run blocking center, in my opinion, than he is a pass blocking center, and that reflects in his grades through PFF, where they've often actually graded him as a pretty poor pass blocker. So Hainsey is probably a better pass blocker than he is a run blocker. So that's something to keep in mind. I do think Hainsey is going to surprise people. I think he can play. Shaq Mason, we know he's a beast. He got traded from the Patriots to the Bucs. He's one of the best run blocking guards in football and is a quality pass blocker as well. But that combo with him and Wirfs is going to dominate. And I expect that with that rare combo of Mason and Wirfs on the right side, it's going to allow the Bucs to, you know, try a lot of different things in terms of double teams on the left side and, you know, different, just scheming up the protections a little bit different because you've got a one-man wall at right tackle in Tristan Wirfs, and you've got a guy that can shut down a lot of the best interior pass rushers in Shaq Mason. So that's something to look for, is how the Bucs utilize their protections and kind of shift it towards the left side to protect the left side. Cam Brate, Kyle Rudolph are the tight ends. Should both kind of rotate in there. Cam Brate's a better receiver. Kyle Rudolph's a better blocker. Julio looking really good in training camp, looking like himself, Fournette says. Chris Godwin should be back early in the year, but when he's not, you're going to put Russell Gage into that slot spot. Mike Evans, one of the best receivers in the league. Of course, you got Lenny Fournette. They added Rashad White, the rookie out of Arizona State, who's a good pass catcher as well. And then you got the defense. This is a defense that a lot of people are starting to kind of grasp onto as one of the better ones in the NFL. You know, I was kind of leading that charge a little bit. I feel like early in the offseason, continued to raise my expectations as the season has worn on. I do think that the Bucs defense is going to be one of the best in the NFL, and I think it has a lot to do with health and Akeem Hicks and Logan Ryan. So those are huge additions for this defense. Logan Ryan, I expect to play a lot in the nickel, which has single-handedly been the worst position for the Bucs, at least last year and the year before. Sean Murphy-Bunting has heavily struggled against guys like Cooper Kupp, who everyone has struggled against. But I do believe that this defense will play a little bit more zone coverage than we're used to seeing. They typically mix in man coverage, but probably more zone coverage. And Logan Ryan will be involved as that nickel player or that extra safety in the box. Mike Edwards takes over for Whitehead. You could also see Keanu Neal, who they signed. I think Keanu Neal is going to be a nice addition for them as well. I just feel like these guys that are veterans, Logan Ryan, Keanu Neal, Akeem Hicks, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder with the Bucs because the Bucs are a championship team. Devin White, expect him to play better this year than he did last year. Levante David's a stud. Vita Vea is incredible. Shaq Barrett's a beast. Akeem Hicks apparently has been dominant in training camp. You know, we know what Antoine Winfield, he had a huge breakout year last year. Jamel Dean's a good player. Carlton Davis a good player. I would say Davis better than Dean, but I like both of them. The other position that is maybe, I guess the biggest position of question mark, I mean, there's not much to question here, but the biggest question mark is the edge position. You know, Joe Tryon kind of takes over for what they had in JPP. JPP was really bad last year. You know, that's a guy that was a name, right? He was a name on the field that everyone's like, oh, that's Jason Pierre-Paul. And he was incredible the year before, but he fell off the face of the planet last year. He was really bad. And Joe Tryon will fill in for him. They added Carl Nassib in free agency. They also have Anthony Nelson, who's a player that continues to get better, especially as a run defender. So the Bucs have plenty of depth. I mean, Logan Hall's a high second round pick, first pick of the second round. Didn't even mention him there. So this is a team with loaded talent, both sides of the ball. I think their defense will take on more of the load this year because their offense really was the reason they were 13-4 last year. Their defense wasn't very good last year because of all the injuries. You know, this continues to be said on ESPN. I'm glad that they're finally bringing it up, but that secondary did not have their full unit until the playoffs. You know, Sean Murphy-Bunting got hurt in the first half of the week 1 game versus the Cowboys, and then they never had their secondary together for the rest of the year, where Winfield got hurt, Davis got hurt, Dean got hurt. They were bringing in Richard Sherman, who was like, couldn't even run. So they had issues on defense last year from an injury perspective. I expect that to improve this year, and I expect their defense to dominate this year, as well as their offense being very good. So from a record perspective, this is one of the top teams in the NFL, one of the top teams in the NFC. I have them going 13-4 again this year. I think their schedule is a little bit tougher, but I do expect them to regress to the mean in terms of injuries. I expect them to be a little bit healthier this year, which will help them win more games and have less confusion in their lineup. Ceiling is 15-2. You know, perhaps they're dominant on both sides of the football, which would mean 15-2. Floor is 10-7. I think that's their absolute worst they can go as long as Tom Brady is healthy, because Tom Brady does not, win less than a certain amount of games. And their over-under's 11.5. I would take the over. I think the schedule is tough, but the schedule isn't like... It's also favorable because the schedule has a lot of their toughest games at home. They play a lot of their tougher games at home. Teams like the Bengals, teams like the Chiefs, teams like the Packers, teams that you would consider to be tough games. They're all at home, where the Bucs were really good last year, where they were dominant last year at home. They only lost to the team that they always lose to, the Saints. So the Bucs, 13-4, number 1 team in the NFC South, and potentially the number 1 team in the NFC, but we will see. Okay, now let's get to the Saints. The New Orleans Saints are up next. The Saints are a bit tricky because you lose Sean Payton, Jameis Winston was decent last year. Not great, not bad. Decent last year when he was healthy. He comes back. So new coach. They added a lot at wide receiver. Jarvis Landry, Chris Olave. They make those guys that were playing big roles for them last year into more of depth pieces. Alvin Kamara dealing with some sort of weird suspension issue. Maybe he's not suspended. I don't think he will be. Mark Ingram's back for the whole year, which kind of is not a huge impact on the roster, the talent, but it's a huge impact in terms of the locker room, I think, because he's a good leader. The offensive line is probably the most questionable it's been in years in terms of losing Terron Armstead. It's been one of the elite offensive lines in the league for a long time. But that being said, it's not bad either, so don't expect it to be bad. It's not a bad offensive line, but it's just not dominant the way it was. Michael Thomas is a huge X factor for this team. Appears to be playing this year, appears to be healthy, but continues to, maybe a hamstring creeps up here and there every once in a while. So we'll see if he can stay healthy. Defensively, they lost pieces, but they also added pieces. They lost a Marcus Williams, but they added a Tyrann Mathieu. They traded Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, which was kind of odd. I didn't really understand that one. But this is a defense that I would argue is one of the best in football. So let's take a look at both sides of the ball for the New Orleans Saints. Offensively, I think they're going to be about average. I kind of see it as slightly below average. I think when you lose Sean Payton's play calling ability and the way that he is so gifted on that side of the ball, it does hurt you. I do think if Jameis is healthy, he's going to be a bit of a roller coaster at times. I think he'll have success, but I think he'll also have bad games. Chris Olave, I'm not sure if he's going to be... I expect him to impact the deep parts of the field, but I don't know if he's going to be a consistent threat in this offense. I do expect if Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry are there for the whole season, I expect them to kind of work the short and intermediate areas of the field. They don't have much at tight end. Maybe Taysom Hill contributes there. Alvin Kamara, he's a mismatch nightmare out of the backfield. He's going to get his. Jameis was comfortable dunking the ball down to him when he needed to. Eric McCoy's a good player. Didn't have his best season last year. Pete and Ruiz have been up and down throughout their careers. Ramczyk is an elite player still, but even he saw a little bit of a dip in his play last year. So the Saints offensively, I think they're going to have some games where they're really good and really, hitting on all cylinders. And I think there's going to be games where it's a really low scoring game. It's kind of just a slow pace game. They're relying on their defense to win. So I could see a bit of both for them on that side of the football. Defensively, I think they're arguably the best in football. I rank them number 1. Marcus May is now dealing with some sort of issue off the field. Not sure how that's going to impact his season, but that's a very good safety duo with Mathieu and May. Demario Davis is still playing at a very high level. So is Cameron Jordan. Cameron Jordan had a dominant end of the year stretch last year. He was absolutely bonkers last season at the end of the year. Marcus Davenport, when he's been healthy the last 2 years, he's been one of the most underrated pass rushers in football. David Onyemata, not suspended this year. Going to play the whole year. Is very good. Tuttle is an underrated player. PJ Williams is solid. Adebo, they're expecting a big year breakout for him. Marcus Davenport shuts down players regularly. I think that this defense is arguably the best in the NFL. They're deep on the D-lines always. They're always good against the run. They're always, kind of difficult to figure out in terms of their blitz packages. This is a defense that can cover man-to-man. This is a defense that can mix in their coverages. This is a defense with a lot of very high IQ players. This is a defense that's also physical, tough, gritty. It's a great combination of a lot of different things that you want on a defense. It's a team that can rush with 4, a team that can blitz, a team that can cover, a team that can, just do so many different things. So I like this defense. I like this team overall. I think the inconsistencies of the new coaching, the new, Jameis is the quarterback, who I'm not overly high on. I've got them as a playoff team. But I do have them as a wild card team, and my official record for the Saints is 9-8. I just think they're going to be in a lot of close games, which I think is difficult to always win those games, because I think their defense is going to make them tough to beat even for the best teams in the NFL, but I think their offense in those games might hurt them a little bit. I'm not 100% confident that Michael Thomas is going to be 100% healthy the whole year. You know, they are getting a little older, so there is potentially more of a floor possibility of 6-11. But if Jameis plays some good football, if their offensive line continues to perform, if their defense plays the way it did last year, this is a team that could easily compete for this division, and even with the Bucks, who's arguably the best team in this conference, and they could go 11-6. That's a possibility as well. The over-under, I've got them slightly going over. I could see them winning 9-10 games most realistically, and going over at their current line of 8.5. Woo! The New Orleans Saints, going to be a good football team. That's the end of the NFC South, guys. Just before I get to the final two divisions, the West and the North, I'm going to take a quick break to get some water, and I'll be right back. So you guys let me know how you see the NFC North and the NFC West, the division standings from first to fourth, both ways. Let me know how you guys feel about that, and I'll be right back here in a second. All right. Okay, we're back. What do we got for predictions? How you guys enjoying the video so far? Gronk spike the like button if you're enjoying. Jeff's got Bucks, Panthers, Saints, Falcons in that order. See you, Sing. Thanks for coming, man. Jeff says Rams, Niners, Cards, and I'm not going to say the last one. Last Second Sports, what's up, man? Niners / Rams / Cardinals / Seahawks. In that order, Packers, Vikings, Lions, Bears. Okay, let's begin with, who do we want to start with? The Chicago Bears. Let's go with the Bears. Okay. So, the Chicago Bears are a team that I thought was going to be, picking number one at the beginning of the offseason. I was just absolutely... I couldn't understand what they were doing with this team. The offensive line revamped. The defense revamped. New coach, but also new promise for this franchise and for this team. And, you know, since I've seen this team hit the field, I know I'm going to bring up preseason again. People are going to love that, but I like what I'm seeing from Justin Fields, man. I think Justin Fields could take a step forward, and if that's the case, I do think this team could be a little bit better than people think, right? I'm not saying they're going to be like elite or anything like that, but I do think that they're going to be a little bit better than the worst team in the NFL, a little bit more competitive, because ultimately, this is a team that's in rebuild mode, and they're just trying to figure out who are going to be their core pieces for the future. So let's take a look at the offense. The Chicago Bears offense, led by Justin Fields, who I thought looked good in preseason. I think he's throwing the ball well. I think he's moving well. I think something that maybe some underestimated is his movement ability in the NFL. David Montgomery, good running back, looks healthy, looks fast, looked a little bit sluggish last year, but looking better right now, David Montgomery. Darnell Mooney, I think this guy's going to have a huge year this year. I think he's going to be a breakout receiver. By far the team's most talented receiver on this team. He's going to see a lot of targets, as he did last year, but the thing that I love about Mooney and Fields is they complement each other well. Mooney can stretch the field. He can go deep. He's got the speed. Justin Fields has got a big arm, and his best ability is to throw the ball down the field. Cole Kmet's a guy that also could take a step forward. Mooney and Kmet are hitting those ages of third season-ish where they're expected to take jumps forward, and I see it happening with both of these players. Cole Kmet's another one that looks pretty good in preseason play and looks like he's going to take a jump this year. The offensive line is a big issue. Cody Whitehair is a pretty good player. He's a standout on this offensive line, having played guard and center throughout his career. But the rest of this unit is an absolute utter disaster. I do believe that they're going to struggle a lot in, third and long situations to be able to protect Justin Fields. Fields is going to have to be able to scramble around and create for himself, which I think is going to lead to a lot of scrambles, running the ball. I do think this team needs to stay ahead of the chains to keep their offensive line in manageable situations because it's just not good. I mean, you've got a rookie left tackle. You've got a veteran right tackle in Riley Reif, who I don't know how much he's got left. Tevin Jenkins, who has been a disaster. Them trying him on the offensive line at tackle. They expected him to be the right tackle of the future. I believe they're trying to move him inside. Lucas Patrick's another guy that's just been kind of a backup his whole career. He is more of a veteran, but he's been a backup. The receivers are bad outside of Darnell Mooney, with guys like N'Keal Harry and Byron Pringle and Velus Jones Jr. and St. Brown. These guys are all not very good. Defensively, I do think they have the chance to be competitive defensively with a defensive head coach. I do think that he's going to have them playing well. Robert Quinn, the ageless wonder, had like 1,000 sacks last year. They did bring in a lot of players, younger players in the secondary. Kyler Gordon, high priority draft pick. Brickser, priority draft pick as well. Like both of these players, I liked Brisker a lot coming out of Penn State. That guy can play, especially around the line of scrimmage. He's very smart. He diagnoses things very, very well. Roquan Smith is going to decide to play this year. He's really good when he plays. Blackson, Jones, not much on the interior defensive line. Eddie Jackson's still a good player. Jalen Johnson's a good player. Kyler Gordon, if he could surprise, then maybe you got a makings of a pretty good secondary, but it's a solid secondary with a pretty good edge pass rush and not a great interior defense overall. So, the Chicago Bears, what is their record going to be this season? There's no doubt that they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. I've got them going 4-13. While I do see promise in Justin Fields, I do see promise in Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, some of their younger players defensively. I just don't see enough on the offensive line. I don't see enough proven commodities at receiver. I don't see enough proven commodities on the defensive line. So I've got the Chicago Bears going 4-13, which is a step above a team like the Atlanta Falcons, and you will see is a step above one or two other NFC teams that have yet to come in this video. So the Bears will not be the worst team in the conference, but they'll be one of the worst teams in the conference, and I will take the under 6.5 for the Bears. Okay. So the next team is the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions, everybody is on the bandwagon to restore the roar of the Detroit Lions. Dan Campbell has the people going. Dan Campbell has the people pumped and excited about the future of the Detroit Lions. But how many times have we gotten on the Detroit Lions bandwagon? And how is this year different? How is it different? Okay, I look at this team. I think that they're exciting. I think there's things to be really excited about. I think the offense has the talent around Jared Goff to actually be a pretty good unit. I just don't know if this team is going to be able to meet the expectations that everybody on the internet, everybody on Twitter, everybody in the gambling community, and everybody watching Hard Knocks thinks that they're going to be. I think they're going to be better. I think they're going to improve. I think they're going to be fun. But that doesn't mean they're going to be good. Okay? Those are different things. The Detroit Lions offense. As you can see, a good offense. Okay? You've got DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams in the backfield. Swift could have a huge year this year as long as he stays healthy. DJ Chark was a very underrated add at wide receiver. I think he's going to play a role early in the year. And you're going to see my guy, the best receiver in the draft, Jameson Williams, break out at the end of the year and have a massive impact on this offense at the end of the season with his speed. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a very good receiver from the slot. Technician, great route runner. I think he's going to have a good year. Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell are very, very good at tackle, being able to protect Jared Goff. Jackson and Vaitai are okay at guard. You know, Jackson a bit better than Vaitai. Ragnow's very good as long as he is healthy. Josh Reynolds is a serviceable wide receiver 3. I think they also have Raymond in there as well. Reynolds is a serviceable wide receiver 3 until Jameson Williams comes back. When Jameson Williams is on the field, this is a very good offense. I mean, on paper, it is. I'm not going to lie about that. It is. You got the offensive line, you got the receivers, you got the running back, but you've got Jared Goof. You've got the Goof man at the helm. Jared Goff, he's got to unlock. He's got to get loose. He's got to make throws. If I see Jared Goff just throwing the ball 2 yards at a time, to darn DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkins in the whole game, I'm going to lose my marbles. Okay, Jared Goff, you got to uncork it a little bit here to be able to have success for this team. Because you know why? Jared Goff's got to uncork it, or else this defense is not going to be able to hold up their side of the bargain. I mean, the defense, I see some potential in the front seven. I see potential in the defensive line. Hutchinson, Harris, Brockers, McNeil, Akora. They've got potential on the defensive line to actually be a much better unit than people think. But the corners are highly questionable. Is Okuda, I know that he was the 3rd overall pick. Is he good? I don't know. Who's Parker? Aurier had 1 million interceptions. I think he's going to be solid for them once again. Anzalone is not a starting linebacker in the NFL. I'm sorry. Tracy Walker is an average safety. Deshaun Elliott haven't been in love with his play over his career. So I think the Detroit defense is still a year or two away. But the offense is like right there. Like it's really close, but it comes down to the goofball. So let's give my record prediction for the Detroit Lions. Detroit Lions are 6-11 for this year. I know. I'm not restoring the roar this year. Maybe next year. I just do not believe that in close games, which the Lions will find themselves in because they did last year, Jared Goff is going to put you over the top in these close games. I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. Call me a hater, call me whatever you want. I like the Lions. I just don't see it. I think they're a year away. Okay, my ceiling is 9-8, wild card team. Floor, 4-13. Their defense sucks. Okay. Over under, I'm going under, but like I'm not betting on that. Okay. I could see them winning 7 games or 8 games or 6 games. And in that case, I'm not going to bet on it. Okay. So yeah, the Lions could surprise me slightly and win 8 games, but I don't think they're any better than 9-8, 8-9, just because they're capped. Their ceiling is capped by Jared Goff, and their ceiling is capped by a bad defense in the secondary and a bad. I honestly, like, Dan Campbell is a great dude. I don't know how great of a coach he is. Like, I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so the Lions 6-11. Next, Green Bay Packers. Everybody wants to know, will the Green Bay Packers be able to succeed post Davante Adams? Who will Aaron Rodgers' go-to targets be? Will it be Romeo Doubs? Will it be Christian Watson? Will it be Randall Cobb? Will it be Sammy Watkins for 1 week? Will it be Allen Lazard? Or maybe Robert Tonyan? Or maybe A.J. Dillon? I think it's going to have to be everybody. It's going to have to be a little bit of everything. The offense certainly has more questions than it has the last couple of years, but the defense is what everybody's excited about with the Packers. It could be the best defense in the NFL. That's what everybody keeps telling me. So let's talk about it. The Green Bay Packers, I do think they're going to make the playoffs. Absolutely. They got Aaron Rodgers. As long as he's healthy, they'll make the playoffs. Matt LaFleur has been a good coach. He's been a stabilizing force for this franchise. They're making the playoffs. Will they win the division? I don't think it's a lock. I think there's another team in this division, the Minnesota Vikings, that could steal the division from them this year. But I do feel like they're the favorites to win this division. They should win this division, but I don't think it's a lock the way it has been. Okay? The offense. The offense is a big question at receiver. Everyone talks about it, okay? So how I see it going is Allen Lazard is going to be the guy that they get the most targets. They're going to move Allen Lazard around. He's going to play on the outside. He's going to play in slot. And they're going to figure out all these different ways to manipulate the coverage and manipulate the defense. Matt LaFleur does a very good job of doing this. He's very good at makeshift screens and motion and figuring out matchups to get his guys the ball. He did it with Davante Adams consistently. Allen Lazard is going to be utilized in that similar way. I think he'll catch about 70 passes. Okay. Randall Cobb, he's a vet. Randall Cobb will make some plays. He'll pop up in some games, but I don't expect him to be consistent. Sammy Watkins, he'll be good in week 1. Left tackle, David Bakhtiari. He's great when he plays. He's still dealing with some injury issues. I am a little bit more concerned with the interior offensive line than others. Runyon, Myers, Newman, none of them are Corey Linsley. They're fine. They're whatever. None of them are Corey Linsley. Elgton Jenkins is very good. Robert Tonyan, people are sleeping on what he could contribute to this offense if he's healthy. He's expected to come back week 1 and be in the lineup week 1. But you know what this guy can do in terms of his red zone presence. He could take over as that primary red zone presence for Rodgers post Davante Adams. Aaron Jones might lead this team in catches. I wouldn't be surprised by that. But I do expect A.J. Dillon to lead this team in carries. And they're going to be a good run-first team, in my opinion. Run first, play action, and Rodgers will work from there. Defensively, very strong on paper. Now, this is the defense in the NFL that I look at and I say, this defense on paper is maybe the best in the NFL, but I question if it will carry to the field. There are other defenses that I feel like are a little bit underrated on paper, right? But then when they get on the field, they're better than they are on paper. This one might be the opposite, okay? Because everything looks great. They've got a great safety duo, Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos. Phenomenal. Savage didn't have his best season last year, but I love that guy. Devondre Campbell had arguably the best season of any linebacker in the NFL. And previous to that, he never really played at that level before. So you wonder if he's going to regress. Okay, that's a possibility. Quay Walker, I loved him coming out of the draft more than a lot of other people. I thought that was a good pick. He's a very good athlete. And he can also go on the edge and rush the passer as well. Rashawn Gary, I think this guy could be one of the top 5 pass rushers in the NFL. He might get there this year. Kenny Clark is unreal. Lowry is a good, solid player. Preston Smith had a very good year last year. Jair is back, and in my opinion is the best man-to-man corner in the NFL. Douglas had a very good year last year. That's why I put him in that category. Was an elite player last year for them, but again, just like Devondre Campbell, never played at that level previously, so how will they perform this year in comparison to last year is a question. Eric Stokes is a player that slept on, under the radar, had a very good rookie season. So that defense, like I said, on paper, phenomenal. One of the best in the game. Will it carry over? Will the coaching get the most out of these players? Will the players that played really well last year play at the same level that they did last year, right? But this team overall is a playoff team. They are a playoff contender. They do have Aaron freaking Rodgers. I got them going 11-6, and I have their ceiling as 13-4, like they've kind of been the last couple of years, but I think they take a slight dip in regular season record because of Davante Adams and the loss of Davante Adams and how that may affect their passing game in big situations early in the year. I think it might take a little bit of time for them to establish who Rodgers' go-to guys are. You know, they play the Vikings in week 1. They play the Bucs early. They've got a tougher schedule this year than they've had in years past. Their floor is 9-8, like still a winning season, but maybe their offense just isn't the same post Davante, which is the scare, and maybe their defense doesn't live up to expectations. In that case, maybe 9-8 is a possibility, but I'm still going with the over for my prediction on the 10.5 line. So, yeah, Packers are about what you expect right there. Okay. So the next team in the NFC North and the final team in the NFC North is the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are a team that I'm very excited about this year in 2022. I think the Vikings are being slept on by virtually everybody in the media. Not enough people are talking about the talent on the Minnesota Vikings and how good the Vikings could be this year. There's a lot of excitement from me to see a Vikings team that is offense first. It's been a long time since the Vikings were an open offensive team. Even with talents like Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adrian Peterson, this team has had bonkers talent offensively over the years. Incredible offensive linemen. They have been a defensive team for a majority of, the last 20 years almost. I feel like they haven't been an offense first team since like Randy Moss, I want to say. But yeah, the Vikings, I think they are very talented. I like the change at coach with Kevin O'Connell. I think it's going to make them a more progressive team. a more progressive offense. I think they're going to play at a higher pace offensively. I think that they're going to be getting the most out of guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Defensively, I think they've improved in the secondary. I think they've improved up front even, potentially. So let's take a look at their roster. Offensively first, Justin Jefferson, most talented receiver in the NFL for my money. Kirk Cousins gets underrated by most people. You know, so today I was listening to a guy that does a fantasy podcast, right? This guy put Kirk Cousins in like the same breath as like Tua, and I almost puked. Dalvin Cook is phenomenal. I do worry about his health all the time though, but Alexander Mattison is a good backup running back. Adam Thielen, I think he can still play. You know, another guy that's getting a little bit older, but when he's on the field, the guy scores touchdowns. If they could keep him healthy, I actually think Thielen could be better this year than a lot of people think, because I think not only will Jefferson benefit from this offense, but Thielen could be a guy to benefit from this offense as well. I feel like Thielen was not usually maximized in this offense. I think with better usage and potentially putting him in better spots to succeed in matchups, I think he could really thrive there. KJ Osborne's another guy that I really like too. Really good number 3 receiver, which they haven't always had the best third receiver. Christian Darrisaw could be their best left tackle they've had in years. Ezra Cleveland's a solid player. Garrett Bradbury, I haven't been excited about him recently. We'll see what the rookie right guard can do. Ingram, who they picked in the second round, and Brian O'Neill is a pretty darn good right tackle. Not elite, but good. So they've got the best tackle duo they've had in a while. Defensively, the defense for the Vikings, improvement up front, adding Danielle Hunter's partner, Zadarius Smith. The last time he was healthy, he was an excellent pass rusher for the Packers. Tomlinson and Phillips is a very solid run defense interior duo. Shannon Sullivan helps the depth of the cornerback group. You expect Pat Pete to start at least early in the year, but they added, what's his name? The rookie corner. I can't remember his name. Vikings fans, help me out. Cameron Dantzler, also expected to take a jump in this defense. This is a defense that's going to play the Vic Fangio style. Very similar to a team like the Rams that you see in the NFL today. Eric Kendricks didn't have his best year last year. Jordan Hicks, I thought, was a good addition. He's been underrated. So I think the Vikings are better on offense. They're better on defense. I think they're a better team. I think their coaching is going to help them offensively, and I think the talent that they've added to the defense is going to help them immensely on defense from a pass rush standpoint, from a secondary coverage standpoint. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. This is a playoff team. Like, this should be a playoff team. The Vikings should be. I don't really understand people keeping them out of that conversation. The offensive line, it's always been an issue for them in recent years, but there's no real issue there right now. Like, sure, it's still a little bit of a concern, but it's not as big of a concern as it's been since Kirk Cousins has gotten there. So I've got the Vikings going 10-7. I considered 11-6, but I wanted to give the Packers a win above the Vikings. So I got the Vikings at 10-7. I got their ceiling at 12-5, which would probably be them winning the division. I think their ceiling would be, awesome offense, top 10 offense, top 5 maybe even, with like a defense that surprises a lot of people. Floor 7-10. Maybe their offensive line implodes. Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen. Dalvin Cook gets hurt. Adam Thielen is old. The defense just doesn't improve. The coaching is bad. Like, that could happen, I guess. And with the 10.5, even though I had them at 10-7, I don't think that's accurate, actually. That's not accurate, the 10.5. I have that from the Packers graphic, I think. So, sorry about that. Their record, let me actually look it up for you guys real quick. Just so you guys know. So, Vikings win total. Win total from the Vikings. I think it's like 8.5. Okay, it's 9.5. Is it 9.5? If it's 9.5, yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, so there we have it. The Vikings. Okay. But Vegas seems to be pretty high on the Vikings too. Interesting. Interesting. So we're done with the NFC North. I did the AFC last video. That was yesterday. All right. Let's start the NFC West with the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, a team like Minnesota, I see moving forward. I see getting better. I see progressing. I see improving. The Arizona Cardinals are a team I see getting worse, regressing, losing pieces, not being as good as it was last year. The Arizona Cardinals, I have been pretty much on with every record I've given them since Cliff Kingsbury has come to town. They have been a very predictable preseason team in terms of this year they're going to be a little bit better than last year. This year they're going to be a playoff team finally. This year they're going to improve slightly. This year they're not going to be that good. So the Cardinals the last 3 or 4 years have been pretty easy to project in my opinion. This year, I feel like it is pretty easy to project a regression coming for the Cardinals. But whenever you have Kyler Murray, a guy that I respect as a very good quarterback, I feel like there's always a chance that they could outdo expectations. They outdid expectations last year. This is something I want to say about Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals. Everybody gets on Cliff for losing games at the end of the year. But what if Cliff is just exceeding expectations early in the year? Because when you really think about it, the Cardinals were who we thought they were last year at the end of the year. Like, they were a good team that made the playoffs that lost in the wild card. Like, that's what we thought they were. We didn't think they were better than that. We didn't. So, at the end of the day, Dennis Green was right. He was right. But, let's take a look at the offense. So, offensively, no D-Hop for the first 6 games. That's going to hurt significantly. This is a tough schedule for the Cardinals, I believe. It's a top 3 hardest schedule in the NFL. But if this offense can click with the addition of Marquise Brown, Kyler Murray's Call of Duty buddy, they could still be a pretty good offense. AJ Green kind of flashed last year, his former self in moments. Rondale Moore is expected to be their like Deebo Samuel-esque player. You know, run the ball, catch the ball, screen game, all that sort of stuff. James Conner, they paid him huge to be the bell cow back, pass game, run game, red zone, offensive line. Humphreys is good. Pugh is good. The left side is solid, protecting the blind side of Kyler. You expect better out of Rodney Hudson, who decided not to retire this offseason, which is always concerning. Hernandez has never been good. I'm not sure why they signed him. Beachum has been just, like a replaceable level right tackle for his career. Zach Ertz, he'll be a quality underneath target, but he's not, nothing special at this point. So I think this offense could potentially be really good once D-Hop comes back, if D-Hop is D-Hop. But if he's not, I didn't think he played that well last year when he was active. I thought he showed some signs of regression. Defensively, you've got Jalen Thompson and Budda Baker at safety. 2 good safeties. I think Jalen Thompson's somebody that's very much slept on. Baker really took on more of a deep safety role last year. Thompson played more in the box than previously. Simmons and Collins, those guys are the X factors of this defense. They need to get the most out of those guys. They drafted them really highly, and they haven't come through yet. Collins taking the spot of Hicks is playing a bigger role this year. Their edge rush and their whole D-line is pretty bad. J.J. Watt, he'll be great for like 5 games, but then after that, I don't know what's going to happen. I do like the Trayvon Mullen trade. I think that helps them. Byron Murphy is solid, but Marco Wilson is not solid. They lost Chandler Jones, and that was a massive loss for them. Massive loss. So, my record prediction for the Arizona Cardinals is not a very good one, not a very nice one, if I say so myself. It is 7-10. I'm sorry, Cardinals fans. I don't think you guys are going back to the playoffs this year. Could you shock me and go 10-7? Absolutely. Could Kyler take a jump forward into being, going from that Dak Prescott very good tier to going to the elite tier? He has the skills to do it. He can do that, but that's the only way you guys squeak into the playoffs this year. Your floor is like 5-12. It all falls apart. Kyler just decides to stay home, skip school, and play Call of Duty. The defense is just terrible. They don't have a pass rush. Their corners stink. James Conner, just plays like old James Conner. D-Hop, just not the same player once he comes back. There's a lot of things that could happen there, but I'm firmly on the under 8.5 for the Arizona Cardinals. Okay. Let's take a sip of water before we get to the Seahawks. I feel like this one's definitely longer than the AFC. Oh, maybe it's not. I'm actually on pretty good time right now. Okay. I got under 8.5. Okay. Seattle Seahawks. I'm sorry to say that you guys will probably suck. And why is that? You've got Drew Lock and Geno Smith at quarterback. On top of having Geno Smith as your projected starter, you have not a very good offensive line and an even worse defense. Yes, I love DK Metcalf. Yes, I love Tyler Lockett. Yes, I love Kenneth Walker and Rashad Penny and even Noah Fant. But you guys simply stink. I'm sorry. There is no way that I am projecting the Seattle Seahawks to be any better than like 4 or 5 wins. Okay? That their ceiling is 6 wins. Ceiling. Their floor is the worst team in the NFL. 1-16. They suck. Okay? But my record prediction is 3-14. I do think, there's probably a possibility that the Seahawks, they win a couple more games than they shouldn't because they've got a great home field advantage. And Pete Carroll's a respectable coach. But I do feel like he's kind of lost his way. But for the over-under to be 5.5, bro, I am hammering the under this year on the Seattle Seahawks. And this is why. Let's take a look at the offense. The offense. I like the skill positions. As I said, Geno, I actually think is better than people think he is, honestly. I think Geno's better than people recall him to be in New York. He's better than that guy with the Jets. But you've got a rookie left tackle. You've got not a very good center. You've got not a very good right tackle. So your tackle position is booty. Your guards are pretty good run blockers, not great pass blockers. It's bad. Defensively, I like the safety duo. Hopefully Jamal Adams can play better this year. Quandre Diggs is a great player. I thought he was the best player on your defense last year. Nwosu is a solid player. Maybe got a little bit overpaid. Taylor's got to produce something off the edge. Hasn't shown anything to this point. Woods and Ford are a nice interior run defense duo. They got a rookie, Trayvon Woolen, starting outside. He's got great athletic ability. Kobe Bryant, yes, I said it. Kobe Bryant is their nickel corner. Sidney Jones is at this point, veteran who I thought he was okay. last year, but nothing special, okay? So, the Seattle Seahawks, 3-14, one of the worst teams in the NFL for sure. Okay. Sorry, Seahawks fans. I actually don't want you guys to be one of the worst teams, by the way. I don't, but you are. Sorry. Okay. Let's get to the final two teams in the NFC West. Which team will win the NFC West? Let's first start with your Super Bowl champion, Los Angeles Rams. We've got Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. Does it get much better than that? You also got Sean McVay at head coach. You got a very respectable defensive coordinator. The Rams should absolutely, positively be in the discussion as a NFC contender this year. Without a shadow of a doubt, the Rams are a contender. They are a team that could get back to the Super Bowl this year. But as we know, it is very hard to repeat. And as I will remind you every chance I get, the last team to repeat are the New England Patriots of 2003 and 2004. So, good coaching, both sides of the ball. You know, leading the way in terms of schematics, from a defensive trend perspective, from an offensive trend perspective over the last couple of years. Offensive line consistently does not appear to be very good and gets better as the season wears on, and McVay usually elevates that unit. Cooper Kupp is basically uncoverable. You added Allen Robinson to wide receiver 2, which he'll play that Odell Beckham role, you know, running those one-on-one deep dig routes and all that sort of stuff that we love to see. I don't know about running back like Cam Akers. We'll see if he's the lead dog or if there's more of a split with Henderson. Regardless, it should be fairly effective. Tyler Higbee, still a solid tight end, coming back from injury. You got to worry about that Matthew Stafford arm, though. Having a little bit of an injury before the year is never a good sign for the long-term future of this team. Defensively, this is what you look like. Bobby Wagner, the former Seahawk great, added to the mix. I think the thing that Bobby Wagner is going to bring is his intelligence, his pre-snap recognition, getting everybody organized on the defense, elevating everybody around him. You know, Bobby Wagner isn't physically that great anymore, but he's just so smart, and he reads and he diagnoses and he'll set everybody up. That's why actually bringing in Eric Weddle last year was actually a savvy move, because Eric Weddle was able to do that for the defense. David Long, they're expecting to take a step forward as a perimeter corner. Troy Hill is back as the nickel corner. It was very good for them a couple seasons ago before leaving to Cleveland. Ernest Jones was solid at linebacker last year. I think Fuller and Scott are a pretty good combo at safety. Not spectacular. I think Jordan Fuller is ascending player. Greg Gaines is super underrated. Leonard Floyd, I think, is kind of underrated, to be honest. He can do a lot of different things at the edge position, drop back in coverage, defend the run, set the edge, and get to the quarterback. Aaron Donald is arguably the best football player on earth. The Rams offensively, Matthew Stafford, again, got to worry about the elbow. Because this is the thing with Stafford, guys. Like, I'm a big Stafford fan. You know, I've been on the Stafford bandwagon far before you guys were, and Stafford's always had injury issues. He's always had injury problems, and that's largely kept him from succeeding consistently in the NFL. And that could be something that, you know, just hurts this team's chances of going far this year. It really could, because Stafford, it just feels like always deals with injuries that hurt him and even like end up, you know, making him miss the season. Like, so I could see that happening, but the Rams offensively, Van Jefferson, when he comes back, is expected to be the clear number 3 receiver. We'll see who takes that spot. Before then, I think they would love it to be Tutu Atwell, but it doesn't appear that's developing very well. Offensive line-wise, Noteboom, I think, is going to be a pretty good replacement for Andrew Whitworth. Whitworth will still be a loss, but Noteboom, I think, is a good player. Dave Edwards is a good player. Brian Allen, great re-signing for them. I'm concerned about right guard. Rob Havenstein, Frankenstein. He's very good at right tackle, but he's getting a little bit up there in age. So, my record projection for the Los Angeles Rams is 11-6. I've got the Rams going 11-6. My ceiling is 13-4. I do think their roster is not as good as last year. I am a little concerned about Stafford. The offensive line's not as good as last year. The receiving core's probably about as good as long as Allen Robinson is Allen Robinson. The defense, it's not as good as it when it had Von Miller, but it's still pretty darn good. Well coached. Floor is like if Stafford misses a couple games, which I guess is more realistic than other quarterbacks missing games this year, which would be 8-9, And then I'm taking the over though. I feel like there's no reason to bet the under against this team, to be honest with you, unless you're just being a dick and hoping for injuries. So, yeah, the Rams are a playoff team without a doubt. So I have them at 11-6. Let's end the NFC with the best coach in the NFL, Kyle Shanahan's San Francisco 49ers. We got the 49ers, a team that I'm hoping does very well this year. Trey Lance, new quarterback for them, but it didn't involve getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy G, Jimmy Handsome, Jimmy GQ, and Gucci Garop. He's still there, but he will be on the bench watching Trey Lance. So we'll see how Trey Lance performs, because, and in a way, this is a very interesting conversation, right? Trey Lance, the money man. They spent all these picks to get him. They traded up to get him. Don't know whose decision it was to pick him ultimately. We will never know if it was Shanahan, if it was Lynch, if it was a collective decision, if it was the garbage man. I don't know who picked him, but nonetheless, he's on the team, okay? And you've got Trey Lance looking over his shoulder. That pressure is on, because if he ever slips up, Jimmy Garoppolo, that guy went to the Super Bowl. He went to the NFC Championship. He can go in there and he can play. So there's always that. And that kind of raises the floor for the 49ers. Shanahan, Lynch, they realize that this team is a Super Bowl roster, a ready team to make that run. And if Lance isn't ready, they can always go back to Jimmy. And that is the possibility there. But when you look at Lance, Kyle did some miraculous things with Jimmy Garoppolo. Some of the stats that Jimmy Garoppolo had didn't even make sense. His yards per attempt, despite being last in air yards. If Trey Lance can just make a couple more plays in a game, in a big game, in a big spot, a couple throws, a couple scrambles, then this team can go from losing the Super Bowl, losing that NFC Championship, to winning the Super Bowl, winning the NFC Championship. That's not to take away from Jimmy G and what he could do in his precision in the middle of the field. Accurate, short, intermediate passer. Very good release. Very good in the trash of the pocket. Lance, he's going to be more erratic. He's going to be more all over the place. But he's going to have more high-end plays. And he's going to be able to bail out the offense a bit more because of the physicality, because of his gifts. Let's take a look at the offense. The offense of the 49ers, you've got Brandon Ayuk. Breakout season coming for Brandon Ayuk. No longer in the doghouse. He is ready to run. George Kittle is going to be George Kittle. Elijah Mitchell is going to be the lead back. But as we know, the Niners typically don't repeat their 1,000-yard rusher. So Jeff Wilson is probably going to be the running back of this year. The offensive line, you've got Trent Williams, who is the best left tackle in the NFL. The questions come for you Niners fans on the interior offensive line with rookies and younger players that have yet to prove themselves. But I will say that Kyle likes to homegrown, homegroom, I don't know what to say, the word is. He likes to grow his offensive linemen through the draft. He likes to tutor them in the system. He likes specific types of linemen. And usually those linemen thrive in his system. I think you guys are overrating the potential downside of the offensive line. I don't think it will be as bad as you guys think it could be. Mike McGlinchey is also good despite Niners fans, for whatever reason, not liking him. Deebo Samuel is a beast. Juwan Jennings is there. Danny Gray is there. They've got some receiver depth that I think they didn't have last year. Holmgren, yes. And then we've got defense. The defense is arguably the best in football. I rank them at number 2. They potentially have the best rotation of pass rushers in the NFL. Epucam, Kinlaw could have a huge year this year. A lot of people are raving about his camp. Eric Armstead, versatile piece. Just can play on the edge, can play on the inside. Nick Bosa could be the defensive player of the year. He's that good. Charvarius Ward is a huge addition to the corner group. And they have added depth there as well. Mosley has always been solid. Fred Warner's a beast. Greenlaw is great. They've got a great linebacking group. Jimmy Ward is probably out for the first couple of weeks. I expect Moore to take his spot at free safety. He's been a little underrated. They've got a new strong safety there. But Jaquiski Tart, I think, became a free agent. I wonder if they would go back and sign him. Jason Verrett is also on this roster. If he ever plays, you know that he could also help the secondary as well. The 49ers, man, great coaching, great scheming up on offense, great scheme on defense. I think D'Amico Ryans did a great job last year. I think he'll continue to build upon what he did last year. I think that they've got special talents in Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. They've got a team that is able to carry a quarterback without the quarterback having to do a lot. And as long as, even if Trey Lance stinks, you've got Jimmy to fall back on. So either way, this team should be good. This team should win a lot of games, and this team should be very competitive. I think they've got a lot more depth than the Rams do. I think from what I've seen, looking at both teams, looking at the training camps, looking at, different videos and things, like really studying it, I feel very much that the Niners have a huge chip on their shoulder this year. I feel like they're kind of pissed off. And they're hungry is the right term to have a very successful season this year. I really sense a hunger from the Niners that you don't see from a lot of other teams in the NFL. The Rams are kind of, they're fat and happy. They won the Super Bowl. They're good. Aaron Donald's already in the Hall of Fame. Stafford proved himself. I think the Niners are hungrier. Obviously, the Rams got the better quarterback, and that should give them the edge for most people. But I did my research into the schedules. The Niners certainly got a more favorable schedule this year. They don't even play, some competitive teams that the Rams have to play. So I look at it, and I got the Niners at the exact same record, baby. 11-6, but I've got them winning the division because the Niners will win the tiebreaker because they typically beat the Rams more times than not. So I've got the Niners winning the division at 11-6, which might be a slight shocker, but they're both 11-6. They're both going to be good. They're both going to be in the playoffs. And the ceiling for the Niners is like if Trey Lance is just insane. He's like the MVP and they go 15-2. The floor is like if Trey Lance sucks, he's terrible. The offensive line sucks. And the Niners, get their injuries on defense. That's 7-10. And then the over-under, I'm hammering the over of 9.5. I think that's kind of disrespectful. Okay. There it is. There it is. Your NFC record predictions. To recap it, we've got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the number 1 seed at 13-4 with the bye. We have the Philadelphia Eagles as the number 2 seed at 12-5. We've got the San Francisco 49ers at 11-6 as the number 3 seed. The Packers as the number 4 seed at 11-6. The Rams at 11-6 at 5 seed. The Vikings at 10-7, the 6 seed. And the Saints 9-8 at the 7 seed. In the hunt, we've got the Cowboys, the Panthers, the Cardinals, the Commanders, and the Lions. And the worst teams in the league, or the NFC, I should say, the Giants, the Bears, the Seahawks, the Falcons. There it is. I'll give you a couple seconds to take a look at that. But that is all. I thank you guys for watching these NFL record predictions, the NFC record predictions to be exact. If you enjoyed, Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. My complete season predictions for 2022 will be coming out probably on Monday, and that is where I'm going to be going through, my Super Bowl winner and the playoffs, the matchups in the playoffs, a quick rundown of all the divisions. That is going to be on Monday, so make sure you check that out. I'm also coming out with my award predictions, my league leader stats predictions. So all that's coming, including all the week 1 stuff very, very soon before I leave to Dallas. So thank you guys for watching. It's Mitch. Gronk spike the like button. We'll see you soon, and peace.